This is how Jin Ping Mei is read chapter 50 in the embroidery version. The harp boy listens to the joy of the swallows and orioles, and Diane plays in Butterfly Alley in the poetry version. The harp boy listens to the joy of the swallows and orioles, and Diane plays in Butterfly Lane 1. The connotation of the 50 chapters. This chapter mainly talks about a few things. Aunt Wang introduced Aunt Su to Wu Yunyang, and brought her the fertility talisman in the firstborn cells. On Wang Liuer's birthday, Simon King brought Hu Sengyou and Li Ping'er's golden longevity hairpin. To wish her a birthday, Diane bullied the book boy. Qin Tong eavesdrops on Simon King's test of medicine, and Dan takes Qin Tong to Butterfly Alley for fun. During the second half of Simon King's trial, he found Li Ping'er, who was menstruating, to have sex with him. There are a few miscellaneous things that seem to be clueless and have no story value. But isn't this the 50th chapter? If the 49 chapters are the pinnacle of the parabolic structure of the book, then wouldn't the 59 chapters be in a better position? How did the author conceive of arranging these events at the same peak position? For readers who are interested in thinking, I recommend starting from the middle of the 5 things. Why did Dan bully the book boy? In the text, Dan seems to be specifically looking for the book boy to bully, but in fact Dan didn't say anything to him. Not before or after. Even in the past 20 or 30 chapters, Dan and the book boy had almost no direct contact. No favors, no grudges, no grudges. Why would Diane bully the book boy? In this regard, according to the habit of this book, we will start from the answer to the question. The last chapter of the text was about Simon King getting Hu Seng's medicine, and this time it is about trying it out for the first time. In the first half, he first tried it with Wang Liuer, and in the second half, he tried it with Li Ping'er. Judging from the development of the story in the whole book, this time the test medicine in this chapter concealed the future deaths of Simon King and Li Ping'er, which is obviously a very important plot. On the other hand, although the matter of the firstborn baby had already been mentioned, the nun did not deliver the medicine until this chapter. It seems that it is difficult to find a baby, and it seems that a nun is laborious. This heralds the birth of Brother Shao in the future and paves the way for Wu Pan's fight for favor after Li Ping'er's death. Of course, it is also a very important plot. Therefore, a normal answer should be written something like Simon King first tried Wu Monk's medicine, Wu Yunyang worshipped the Buddha and got her body, right? However, whether it is a book of poetry or a book of embroidery, the title The Piano Boy Listens to Yan Yinghuan and Diane Plays in Butterfly Alley is used verbatim. Yan Yinghuan refers to Simon King's test of medicine. But what about Butterfly Alley? Obviously Dan. In other words, the goal of answering the question is very simple, which is to highlight Dan. So the corollary question is, why should Dan be highlighted in chapter 50? How did you highlight Dan too? Sha Tong, Qin Tong and Diane. Let's first look at how Dan bullies the book boy. Dan was originally going to pick up Simon King from Wang Liuer's house. When he passed by the shop in front of his house, he saw the book boy, Ping and Fuzixen preparing for dinner and drinks. Dan took a few sips of wine and food and teased the book boy. What a whore. The book boy was very rude and retorted, "Why are you looking for me? You want to be my grandson for a while." Although the relationship between Shatong and Simon King is well known, the previous beatings of Ping and Hua Tong still made other servants frightened. Shatong is really untouchable, but Diane not only dares to provoke, but also has no bottom line. He walked forward, pressed him on the chair, and kissed him, lifted his legs, and pressed him on the kang, and spat into his mouth as hard as he could. They are all around 16 or 17 years old. Modern people think they are middle school students, but in ancient times they were adults. Diane was definitely not joking with the book boy. You must know that even if he bullied the book boy like this, he would still say harsh words. "When I pick up Dad and come back, I will answer him. I won't let the young boy be manipulated to any extent." Yes, he is not afraid either. Ping'an is 2 years older than Dan, but he can only pretend to be a peacemaker. Shopkeeper Fu is much older, but he can only stand aside and watch. When the book boy extorted 20 taels of silver in the 34th chapter, we thought the book boy was very powerful. In the 47th chapter, Dan also blackmailed Wang Liuer for 20 taels of silver for intercession fees. We thought Dan was also very good. But in the 50, after returning to the author and inserting this paragraph, We know that Shetong is far inferior to Dan, let alone Ping, who escaped in the end. Next, Diane took the piano boy to play in Butterfly Alley. Because the piano boy was listening to Yan Ying's Joy, peeking at Simon King's test of medicine, which was unconditionally despised by Diane. He looked like a plum blossom. Why are you just listening to him? In comparison, the peeping posture is humble, but the playing is a strong initiative. One is admiring that a man should be like this, and the other is a heroic cloud of he can replace it. This is Dan that we often see but don't often pay attention to. Since being beaten for delivering letters to Pan Jinlian 15 times, he has learned to become more and more wise. Who should be hidden and who should not be hidden? Who should be flattered and whom should be despised? Should he be lazy and wait for action? Or should he stride forward? Seeing the scene makes him fall in love, but he still turns a blind eye. Everything is clear and clear from then on. If he steals Li Ping'er, he can ventilate his internal and external air. If he steals Wang Liuer, he can be in front of the horse and behind the horse in the future. He will also meet Zheng Aiyu, steal Mrs. Lin, and even break up, who a Ben fourth sister-in-law followed Simon King's influence and grew up day by day. So this time we saw his actual actions, playing around in the prostitute's house, following the same example, instructing his companions to listen to the door, and driving away the Butterfly Lane, prostitute's house. The two bartenders who stayed overnight, threatened with sticks from the Yemen, accompanied prostitutes to drink and listen to music, exchanged sweat towels with young prostitutes, etc. They all imitated Simon King's appearance. We have every reason to believe that one day, he will become the future head of the Simon family and the new tyrant of King. Therefore, whether it is Shetong, Ping or Qin Tong, they are not actually used to compare with Dan, but to set off Dan. In fact, the stories in the following chapters of this chapter all point in the same direction. Setting off Dan, Brother Guan appeared during Simon King's medicine for Monk Hu, and Brother Shao appeared during Wu Yunyang's medicine for giving birth to children. However, Brother Guan was the dead son, Brother Shao was the son of a monk, and only Diane was the fake who finally inherited Simon's family business. Son. Generation. There is no discussion of dead sons, nor of monks. So the 50 chapters at the top of the book are about Simon King's 3 sons, using to real sons who seem to be there but not yet to set off the real son of Dan. Fake son. 3. Brother Guan, Brother Shao and Diane. Brother Guan wants to start with Simon King's test of medicine. Simon King got the magical Humeng medicine, but his first experimental subject was Wang Liuer. How to understand this? It's actually very simple. Firstly, Simon Qingshang was dubious and didn't know the power of Husang's medicine. Secondly, this day happened to be Wang Liuer's birthday. After testing the medicine, and precisely after trying the best sex machine like Wang Liuer, Simon King discovered the huge power of Humeng medicine, so he happily wanted to find someone to share it with. He went to Li Ping'er's room, regardless of whether Li Ping'er slept, whether Brother Guan slept or not, and whether Li Ping'er was menstruating or not. He wanted to sleep with her. In the end, Li Ping'er couldn't stand the hard work and carefully agreed. This is the last sexual description of Simon King and Li Ping'er in the whole book. What does this show? Does it mean that Li Ping'er is extremely lewd, and that Simon King is extremely lewd, shameless, and domineering? Almost all readers will find the cause of Li Ping'er's death from here. It was the menstrual sex that caused Li Ping'er's hemorrhagic syndrome. Simon King must have understood this in the end. He cried with tears, "I was the one who set her up. I killed you" may contain this layer of guilt. But when we look back and read this passage carefully from this perspective, we suddenly have a different feeling. We often say that Simon King is lewd, and we are also willing to say that Li Ping'er is lewd. The most important reason why she fell in love with Simon King in the first place was Simon King's sexual ability. Therefore, inferring from this basis, it is easy to conclude that Simon King Li Ping'er concluded that sex during menstruation was due to excessive lust. However, I have to say, no. It is not completely lustful. From Simon King's point of view, because the medicine had not worn off, he was eager to find his next sexual partner. However, he refused to go to Pan Jinlian, and Li Ping'er pushed him to go to Pan Jinlian's room. But he still refused this. This situation is unique in the book. Both Simon King and Li Ping'er know that sexual intercourse during menstruation is harmful, but Simon King still insists on going his own way. Just using the word porn here does not make sense, because pure sexual desire does not need to be divided into objects. Just like he did with Wang Lior, only love will be selective and paranoid. Similarly, for Li Ping'er, she is the worried and sick person. Simon King is the medicine for slaves. Simon King sex, especially the sex with the extraordinary sexual power of Hu Meng's medicine, is naturally the highest form of love, the best return of love. What deserves our attention next are the small details during the drug testing process by Simon King and Li Ping'er. But suddenly, Li Ping'er slowly coaxed Brother Guan to sleep. As soon as he climbed over, the child woke up. He woke up 3 times in a row. Li Ping'er handed Yingchen and Bo Langer to coax him. He went to the other room with his breasts in his arms, and the two of them were playing freely here. People often think that it was Guanji's death that caused Li Ping'er's excessive sadness and eventual death. However, from this detail, it can be seen that Guanji and Li Ping'er's lustful sex is a natural departure. In other words, if Li Ping'er eventually died of sex this time, then Brother Guan's waking up again and again would be a redemption for Li Ping'er. Li Ping'er gave up this redemption and chose Simon King's love. From this perspective, it was not the death of Brother Guan that caused Li Ping'er's death, but it was precisely Li Ping'er's negligence and irresponsibility that caused Brother Guan's death. Furthermore, if the deaths of Li Ping'er, Guan and even Simon King laid foreshadowing from the peak of chapter 50, then obviously, this also has an important foreshadowing effect on Diana's survival and inheritance of the family business at the end of the book. Finally, let's look at Brother Shao. King Zhu's 2 girls brought Wu Yunyang this time talisman medicine and first birth cells. Wu Yunyang became pregnant with Brother Shao with them. The connotation of the firstborn baby has been analyzed in the previous article. In other words, Wu Yunyang's pregnancy with Brother Shao just proves her good luck. Perhaps the author expresses another metaphor here. The birth talisman and the firstborn baby are originally fictitious, so Brother Shao for the Simon family. It is just a kind of nothingness. Precisely because it is such a kind of nothingness, that is why we need that kind of Dan. Finally, I would like to add a little fun. The last episode of Hu Meng Medicine made Simon King's sexual ability extraordinary, and this episode of childbirth medicine allowed Wu Yunyang to successfully conceive and give birth to a son. These two are the most important events in Jin Ping Mei and even in human reproduction and survival, sex and reproduction. However, the interesting thing is that they are all accomplished by relying on religion in a broad sense. Moreover, the goal of getting the medicine from Hu Meng is sex and happiness, and both the giver and the recipient are men, while the goal of getting the medicine from the nun is reproduction, and both the giver and the recipient are men. Women, the role of sex is so completely divided here. Is this a coincidence or a deliberate arrangement by the author?
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.